Welcome.
Never knowingly diplomatic. We're just a bunch of twats. Charming and charismatic. Fuck that shit with the aristocrats. Evidential, accidental, inconsequential autocrats. Yeah, that's right, with the aristocrats, bitch.
And welcome once again to another episode of The Aristocrats. My name is Christopher Mowdy, and with me is my co-host Alex Botten and his wife Kat. And we also have with us Mark and Fiona, our panelists. And we also have Owen here, Lenitar.
Perfect.
Okay, I just because if I said it a different way, it would have been really bad.
I was going to call him Lenitard.
Oh, that would have been horrible.
What I thought it was for a long time.
That's bad. So today's episode, we've already talked. Well, I haven't, but they have talked on the first episode because I missed that one. The meaning of life. The episode after that, we talked about death, aging, and dying. And now we're going to talk about the future. So last episode was a little more negative because, of course, it was about death, right? But we were being very honest about it, and it went where it went, and I thought it was really great. Oh, and by the way, and there was also interesting conversation in the post-show the last time we aired, and there will also be a post-show tonight hosted by Cliff. Cliff Jumper? Is that his name? 24? Is that a yes?
Yes, he should.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So,
he's the 24th of the Cliff Jumper family. Yeah.
of that lineage. So
Of that lineage, yes.
how would you like to begin the show? Would you like to start talking about the current events, or how horrible your computer
I
is acting?
would like technology to stop. Can I talk about how horrible my computer's acting for a few moments? So I can vent at it. Yeah.
You're venting at the future.
Yeah, venting at the future. Oh my god! And it's always the way that these things happen. Just as you're about to start, I come out. I do the whole rigmarole of just setting up like you do for a normal, broadcast. Then, for some reason, iTunes starts opening, so I shut iTunes. Then it opens again and starts playing a video. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I shut it. Pops up, starts playing the same fucking video again, so I then restart my computer, and my computer then takes like a month for everything to be up. Yes, that face is appropriate, Kat. Then takes my computer a month for everything to be up and running. Then the music didn't play properly, but we got around that and actually came up with a better solution, I think. And yeah, and then when I switched the audio over, which I then do after the title's played in, because we want to have a title for you people watching. All 7 of you at the moment. Where are you all? For the
Matthew
people,
Bell's having a hangout with Pillbox.
they need to come over here, but they can watch it later as well. Yeah, so yeah, because we care, we have a theme tune, we have pictures that are nice, so we have this setup, and so to change it back so I'm not hearing echoes and people aren't getting echoes, I change it back. Usually what happens is that I can continue to hear people, but then whilst Chris was doing his wonderful introduction there, I was sitting here swearing at my computer with my mic muted because I was hearing nothing at all.
Technology hates him.
So are problems like this going to still exist in the future? Is technology going to get savvy enough that it's so user friendly that there are no mistakes like this?
Well, what I'm hoping is that Google will realise that people want to be able to play external audio into fucking Hangouts on Macs, because you can do it on a PC really easily. You just pick stereo audio in as one of the sources, but that option isn't available on the Mac for some unknown reason, and I'll be dead in the ground before I buy a PC to do this on. So, because I demand quality.
Yes, not bitter at all, are you, Alex?
See, this is the one thing that terrifies me about the idea of a post-scarcity dystopian sort of the AIs run shit future. Is what happens when one of the blue screens.
Well, you have multiple redundancies. You see, what I want to be able to happen is to walk up to the computer, go, computer, I'm doing a podcast in half an hour, set everything up, I'll be back in 20 minutes. I come back and everything running.
As he's walking into the room, he goes, really, should you be doing something better with your time, sir?
And I'd say,
And why would it take 20 minutes in the future? Like, hold on a second. If we have technology where you can tell your computer that, and it still takes them 20 minutes to do something a human takes 20 minutes to do, I think that's a fail.
I think it was more the idea that he has to go do
Yeah,
something
I
human
will
for 20
then be
minutes,
back.
like a big shit.
yeah, I could go do a big shit and come back 20 minutes later.
Do
There's a lot
this.
you can
I'll
do.
go back later after my sandwich.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot you can do in 20 minutes.
Absolutely, I'm going to go and have a quick wank.
But do you know the other thing? You should be really
Speaking of
grateful that you've got a Mac.
That's a quick one? 20 minutes is a quick one?
Just getting on a bit.
Or 3.
I'm getting off, and nothing but dust comes out when I eventually reach the end. Like a fine powder.
To be fair, Len did threaten to come on the show without wearing trousers, so.
Well, we can't tell whether he is or not.
Yeah, and you never will know.
Yeah.
The thing is, though,
We have
having-
had a message
having
from
a
Peter,
Mac-
by the way. Peter is coming, but he's and you're back. You're here, Fiona.
Your
Yes.
back is not.
Well,
Back.
how's that happened? Because Fiona sent us all messages earlier
it's-
saying my back's fucked.
It's eased up a wee bit this evening. But no, I'm just thinking, you having a Mac,
Yeah.
just think of one of the unexpected bonuses.
What's that?
It's even more compatible with Richard Raspberry's now free podcast.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah,
Podcast
I
is-
mean, who could have foreseen that? You are so lucky.
I am, and because I've got something that's named after that has the word pod in it. I have my iPod here that I could put his pod. I could cast his pod into this iPod.
And listen to it on replay. Just
And
replay
listen,
it. And
it's a minute and a half long. I could blank out the rest of this 160 gig iPod and put nothing but his podcast on here. Now I think his podcast at a minute and a half long is probably, and he's probably encoded
6 or
at fairly
7
low
gigs.
bits. So it's probably maybe less than a meg.
Mhm.
How many copies could I put on 160 gigabytes?
A lot.
How many? That's 1,000 per. That's 1,000 copies. Let's say 1,000 copies per gigabyte. So I could put about
More than that.
16,000 copies on here.
Wow.
160,000.
Yeah, and you could just listen to it constantly.
I could,
Or you just
160,000
put the
copies.
thing on fucking repeat.
Put it on play just once,
Yeah.
and I could listen to that for the rest of my life.
The drive to work just became a lot more pleasurable.
Sitting at work, listening to it, with the voice just going, it eats its young, and smells of tongue. It wears a hat, but isn't a cat. What was that, Mark? I heard Mark say something, but Mark is having some microphone issues. What was it you said, Mark?
So when's the
Yes.
podcast starting?
When's the podcast? When's the podcast starting?
It's already
this
started.
is it. We're live. We're live. We're
It has begun.
we are live and happening. So yeah, so I was saying that Peter is joining us as well at some point, but he's out identifying wreckage in the Indian Ocean at the moment, I believe.
Oh yeah.
He's going, yeah, that's plenty of wreckage.
Didn't have to put.
That's very helpful.
Guys,
Looks like we
yeah,
have some record here.
Yeah, it looks like a wing to me. Yeah, yeah, that's a wing. Peter, come over here. What do you think this is? It looks like a chair. I'm joking about a horrific event there, but you know, if we can't laugh at tragedy,
What
what
can
can
you
we
laugh
laugh at?
at?
We discovered this last week. If you can't, like in the last 2 weeks when we were doing serious subjects, God, you have those days when you just want to start again. Do 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 do. Welcome. Yeah.
Can you move the camera slightly so people can't see my horrible DIY corner?
There you go. Is that better?
Yes.
There you go. So yeah, we should talk a little bit about what's been happening in the world, and then we'll come to my
I don't know why I'm pulling
YouTube
faces.
news, which is going to be great when we get to that.
You mean
YouTube.
the one you didn't do, YouTube?
Something will happen. It'll be
Just
it'll be
hopping out the end of your
Yeah.
cock.
So things that have happened in the world this week. What has happened in the world this week?
Well, I found out that Lana Turner has terrifyingly abnormal junk. That's about it.
Oh yeah, but I think we should save that for.
The Iron Shillelagh of Doom.
We should,
You know what? I'm
his
going
wonky
to take that and
shillelagh.
pretend I thought of it.
the wonky shillelagh.
Mark's sitting there going, "Oh my God, what's happened here?"
Cat's on the podcast.
Pretty
Oh.
much.
Don't look at it in the eye, ladies.
So what's happened this week? Well, in the world of tech, Amazon have released a set-top box called the
Oh yeah. I saw that.
Amazon Fire
and
set-top
then
box.
price themselves out of the market by making it the same cost as an Apple.
Yeah, an Apple TV. They've placed it at the top range. I mean, it does output HD, but then the top range Roku's output HD. You're currently watching CNET. And it's and I could, I looked at this thing and I thought, well, it's got the same kind of form factor as the Roku's and the Apple TV. It's not really leaping out at me, but. So that was something that I knew had happened. I know that other things have happened in the world this week, but I've been so intrigued by online events that not paid much attention. Has anybody else got anything?
I'm sure the Russians were being douchebags at some point. I know they've been doing stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's an odd one.
We've been having an awful lot of earthquakes near Chile.
Oh yeah, they had another one, didn't they?
They've had more than one. They've had. I'm just going through the list of them, and it's just the list of aftershocks is incredible. After the 8 that they had on the 1st, they've had maybe about 20.
Jesus.
Well, New Zealand and Australia were getting smashed by earthquakes last year.
Were they?
Yeah.
Well, remember Chris Winchester continually updated about how there were earthquakes in New Zealand.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
So the hobbits were getting shaken around.
Yeah.
I mean, they even had a 7.8 2 days after the big one.
And they go up in a kind of a logarithmic scale that it goes up in. So
Like
each
X-Men.
one,
10 times more powerful than the magnitude below or something.
so
Yeah.
10 times. I thought it was twice as much, but it goes up that much. So a 2 is magnitudes higher than a.
Well, that's why it's a 7.1, 7.2. So.
Jesus. That sucks for people.
I'll pop this into the wee chat window, which is a brilliant little graphic that updates itself all the time, and you can click on the little bit underneath and see the sheer numbers.
Christ.
I've been keeping an eye on it because I want to see if the stress moves up
I'm going to add it to the discussion.
towards California. The stress that's been released, because usually the earthquakes follow up the west coast of Chile up California towards San Francisco, and then up round into Alaska. Keep an eye on it because there's the Cascadia Fault, which is a subduction zone, which if it goes will wipe out Seattle.
Ooh.
So I keep an eye to see if any of these stresses transfer up and round, because they usually do.
People taking away from the edge.
Prophet of doom here, prophet of doom. We're all doomed.
Well, my mum used to talk about, because she grew up in Oregon, she used to talk about how obviously California tends to have sort of shifting earthquakes. Oregon actually has rolling ones, so the ground will do this.
Yeah.
They undulate.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently she's only seen 1 or 2 of them, but they're freaky as hell. Because, I mean, I lived in California for a brief period of time, and I did not like earthquakes at all. They used to wake me up, and my roommate would be like, "That was nothing, go back to sleep." And I'd be like, "No, it's shaking, I don't want to die."
That was nothing. Go back to sleep. It does sound a little bit rapey, doesn't it? That. Hello, Peter. You've joined us
Hi, Goody.
Yes, yeah, finally. Yeah.
from Australia.
We were imitating you a minute ago.
We've got flattering Peter now. Come on,
That's
Gaz.
exactly right. That's what I was going to say. It's the most sincerest form of flattery.
It is. So, yeah, so this earthquake you're saying could have caused problems for Seattle.
Well, no, what I'm thinking is if this, you know how the earthquake is caused by the stress suddenly being released?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, that stress that's been
You've all
released
been there.
is going to transfer north. And usually when you get a big event down off the coast of Chile, you then find that you get earthquakes running up the west coast of Chile, up through Mexico, up California, up round Alaska. Then it goes down the coast of Russia, heads towards Australia, and then curves round towards the Banda Aceh region. Or it goes down the east coast of Australia. And it's just the stress being transferred.
So let's see if I can find something that actually illustrates this for people watching.
Well, if you, that thingy, the graphic I put in.
Yeah. Oh, does it have a graphic? Oh, great.
It's
Yeah,
weird.
you can actually see where all these earthquakes are centred in Chile.
Okay. Let's
And
have
you
a
can see how they would run right up
God.
the coast
Yeah.
of North America.
What I will do is I will share that into the. I will screen share this so that people can see because it's actually
Well,
really.
I've already put the link in.
Yeah. Well, what
the
I'll do
chat.
is I'll put it so that people can actually see it while we're.
Yes.
You know, because we can fucking multitask on this show. I'll still focus for a moment
Yeah,
and
we
I'll make sure.
fuck up 3 things at once.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I don't pick the porn window, and I'll share that. So
Yeah.
what we're looking at there is the map with this on.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interactive looking thing. So you're saying that it would go up
Yeah,
the coast
if
from
you
there.
look at where all this big earthquake in Chile was centred, okay?
So just
Okay.
where I'm kind of circling my mouse now.
The giant
When the
red cross.
plates have been jammed together, they're okay, and they've suddenly released the stress. That stress is then going to move north up the fault line,
Yeah,
okay? Right up coast of California,
yeah.
round Alaska, and then start coming down the coast of Russia.
Wow.
See that? And then it'll either go down the east coast of Australia
Yeah,
or curve along the north coast of Australia and up to where Banda Aceh is, and that's where the big Boxing Day tsunami was.
yeah.
But up on the in the Cascades,
Alex, real quick, click on your cube on the bottom so that your picture with the cursor is always on the screen while Fiona is narrating.
It should
I've done
be
that.
Yeah, it should be. I've got it clicked on me, so it should be.
yeah, click
I
it.
can
Just,
have focus.
Maybe,
so.
maybe it's just because I'm in the hang. It keeps flipping back and forth. Just want to make sure
if
everybody
you
was.
click on
soaking this up.
Alex's box, it'll stay on.
Yeah, it
But
should
not
stay on
Xbox.
mine, but I will open Pro Studio, install that, and make sure that I keep focus for a few moments by that method as well. Does that do it? I don't know. Okay, yeah. So I'll make sure I grab the thing here. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So that should keep me on focus. Anyway, so it would come down the coast of come down kind of the Asian coast there.
Yeah,
And then it's either going to go one way around Australia like that, or it's going to go
Up and around.
up and around
yeah.
and
yeah.
twat the
But the big one
subcontinent.
up in the Northern America, you've got
Mhm.
the Cascades,
Mhm.
and there's a Cascadia fault. You know, that's a thrust fault, and there's 3 plates meet up there. So while you've got running right up the coast, you've got the strike slip, so the plates are sliding past each other. There's a third plate up off at the Cascadia fault. It's a subduction zone, where one plate is going under another, and this is the one they're really worried about for the really big one for Seattle, because it would be a mega thrust,
Oof.
and they've no idea. I mean, I think it's maybe 40,000 years overdue.
That could be quite bad.
So I always keep an eye on anything that's happening on the west coast of either South America or North America, just in case the stresses do run right up the fault. You'll notice, I mean, there's nothing happening near the San Andreas at the moment,
No.
because the San Andreas fault seems to have given up and the stresses have transferred inland to the Hayward fault. So that's on the other side of the bay from San Francisco.
Mhm.
And what was the other fault called? Was it the Cavaleras?
It does
It's all
tie.
changing in that region, though. The fault lines are all changing.
There was an article that I read on BBC, I think, a couple of days ago that was talking about about feeding the energy back in from earthquakes to kind of minimise the damage. I can't quite remember the story. It sounded like they were saying it was something they were saying that they could maybe do at some point in the future. Which again, yeah, I said the title of the episode again, and it kind of seemed to me that they were talking about if you can shift energy back towards it, you're not going to be able to stop the earthquake from happening, but you can minimise the damage from it or something.
Yeah.
As you can probably tell, I didn't read it properly.
I think the first thing they're going to have to get sorted out before they do anything like that, though, is you really get earthquake prediction improved a bit, because if you've got a fault line unzipping like that, say the entire length of San Andreas decided to go from the south to the north. When it goes in the south, that then gives them, say, half an hour's warning further north. But that's not really good enough.
No.
You need to know what the stresses on the rocks are.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's going to go. What is the limit of stress that the rock will take before that fault moves? And so far that they can tell that the stress has built up, but they can't tell you when it's going to go. And I think that's something that and also, I mean, a lot of the building that's been done was done before they'd mapped any of the faults. And now they know that they built San Francisco in the worst place possible. And I think they're going to have to bear this in mind in the future. Where they build, it's like in Britain at the moment, we're having to look at not building on floodplains.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've started, they've put in the drainage, they've reclaimed the land, they've built the houses on it, and then we get the heavy rain, and all these people are flooded out of their homes. And I mean, there was one poor woman who was only 2 weeks back in from a flood a year ago, and she got flooded out again. And she's lost everything both times. And it's just where we're building houses, we're building them on floodplains.
Well, it's one of the things that we saw on our surveyor's report when we bought this place. It kind of lists the local flood areas.
Mm-hmm.
The nearest area that will flood is luckily not next to us. It's like, yeah, we're safe. But the thing is, Birmingham and the surrounding areas built on the I can't remember what it's called. It's a plateau we're up on. Mm-hmm. Kind of slightly raised up. It's one of these things that if you do those maps where you ramp up flooding from the ice caps melting, we're fine. Whatever happens, we're still, Leicester might be on the coast, but we're still all right. So, it could be worse for other people, but for us it'll be fine. But then loads of people wanting to move into our house.
Well, I'm 600 feet above sea level.
I've got
you'll be fine.
1, 2, 3 or 4 people that I can already count that can come live in my house.
Yeah. We can put people up. So, what else has happened this week? Is there any news coming down? There was something I heard from Australia that was going on. Peter, is your Prime Minister being a dick?
Our Prime Minister is a permanent dick. He's a complete fucking arsehole every day. So I don't know whether he's. I don't know what he's done.
Which bit of dickery?
Oh well, they introduced knighthood. Reintroduced.
I want you to describe how you feel about him in a less technical way.
Well, if I told you he's so far beneath contempt, he has to reach up to touch bottom. That would be well, see, he's not very popular here because he was born in England, so he has this. He's referred to as a 2 pound pom here, and he has this pang, or for the old days. He's an arch conservative, and he reintroduced something we haven't had for 30 years here, which we got rid of 30 odd years ago, which was knighthoods and all that sort of stuff. And he's been roundly hounded by everybody on social media and the press, and that probably won't survive very long. But yeah.
Because didn't he take over from somebody who was fairly popular? Because it wasn't Julia Gillard.
No. We can blame Rupert Murdoch for all of it, basically. the Murdoch press had it in for the last Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, and they basically put in the most biased, one-sided bloody campaign I've ever seen in newspapers. And because Murdoch owns 90% of the newspapers in Australia, it was pretty much, you couldn't really read anything but, and made the other Prime Minister and party look pretty bad. So they won the last election. Basically, well, they didn't win it. The Labor Party lost it basically. So bad publicity, bad decisions. I mean, all politicians are idiots, but they made some pretty bad decisions. Got their asses kicked for it, and by default, we ended up with this fucking idiot and his mob. And the way they're going, they're not going to last on one term, but you have to put up with it for another 2.5 years. So.
Bad times. So, yeah. That's because didn't he do something? Hasn't he done something ridiculous about immigration or something as well this last week?
Yeah. Oh, he's had this stop the boats policy. Because one of the big political things here is all the illegal aliens invading from Indonesia. Well, you know, all the bloody boat people, and they come in by people traders who you know. They get thousands of dollars for packing these old leaky boats full of refugees and sailing them across bloody very dangerous seas, and some of them sink and some make it here. And they end up on the remote coast of Western Australia where nobody lives and there's no water, and it's all very nasty, but they've blown it up out of all proportion to make it seem like it's some kind of invasion whereby we're being invaded by all these illegal aliens. They're coming in, they should be. They're not refugees. They're terrorists in disguise and all sorts of horrible things like that. And so they've whipped it up into a frenzy. And so what they've done is they've got the actual Navy out on the west coast now, turning back boats. And this has turned out to be a bit of a disaster because some of the boats have sunk and people have drowned, and so, you know, the Navy's being dragged into it and they don't want to be involved in it, obviously, but they have to do what they're told.
Yeah.
So it's become a real shit fight.
That's bad. I mean, to turn back boats.
Yeah.
Knowing.
Oh, it's terrible. It's absolutely appalling.
That's inhuman.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly in shark-infested oceans where they are. I mean, I was out there not long ago on an oil rig, not far from where these refugees are coming in. And the one thing they warn you is the water looks really nice, but whatever you do, don't go in because you're not going to survive more than 5 minutes. The sharks are just everywhere. They'll get you very quickly. So
it's bad times. So before we go on to the next part of the show, is there any other relevant news that anybody else would like to drop into this cauldron of fact?
I have boobs.
Cat does have boobs. That is true. Yeah. Any other?
Me too.
Actually,
I haven't really kept up with the news this week.
There's not been much happening in the UK, has there? It's been there's still the talk about whether Scotland will get independence or not. I kind of was wondering about this though, Fiona, because technically I am a Scot because I have a passport that says Glasgow as my city of birth in it. So, will I get a vote in the referendum?
I have no idea.
I don't think you do.
I don't think you do if you don't live in Scotland, because I think Sean Connery's not getting voting.
Did you say? I think Mark. What did you say about it?
It's only people who live in Scotland who get to vote.
It's only the residents. Oh man.
Yeah.
People who were born there and moved away don't get a vote.
I was going to say, Mark, I can see that you just said in the sidebar that you're getting sound breaking up for you constantly.
Yeah.
Go to the top of the screen and there's that little slider for adjust bandwidth usage. If you turn it right down, it just puts you on image only, which is what you've got, and it makes sure that the audio gets precedent over everything.
Yeah.
And it switches off our video as well, but it'll mean that you'll be able to hear things better, and it'll probably improve your
experience.
thing. And that's a good tip for anybody else who uses Hangouts regularly. Which, as far as I can tell at the moment, is everybody on Earth.
Yes.
Whenever I switch on my computer, I get bombarded. Join this Hangout, join this Hangout, join this Hangout. And Nadia is in 4 or 5 of them simultaneously.
How does she manage?
Bunch of machines around her. She had, actually, the other day, she did have 2 computers on the go and was in 2 Hangouts at the same time. And one person, apparently, this is a story she told, somebody left a Hangout because he didn't want to be in the Hangout with her, joined another hangout, found out she was in that one as well.
Good.
Justice. So,
Yes.
has that worked any better, Mark?
I haven't got a fucking clue where the spider is.
Oh, right. You know where your where the settings are for mic and things like that at the top?
Yeah.
There's a little thing that looks like a fan of a.
Like a
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
If you click on that and it says adjust bandwidth usage, next to your camera, turn camera on and off in your settings.
Ah.
Click on that, lower it right down to low bandwidth, and suddenly you'll be able to hear us.
Should be better.
And then
Is that better?
that's sounding better already.
Woohoo!
Well, bug me. I didn't know that.
It's a little bit
Nah.
better.
You're back to being Fiona again.
Back
Oh,
to the
thanks.
little
Well, I
robot.
seem to be infamous for that.
Oh, back in the day you were.
You
but
were adorable.
when you're just like, "Yep, whoop." What the hell is
Oh, I don't like that. I need that as my ringtone.
I think I've got some of that recorded somewhere. I
Yeah.
must have it somewhere. Yeah.
Oh,
so,
well,
so
get
so
a
before-
hold of it, send me it, and I
I
put it on
will
my
do.
phone as my ringtone.
Excellent. So before we go on to the next stage, is there anything else anybody would like to bring about world news? Mounty's shaking his head. Len's looking.
Let's talk
like
about the fucking future.
the future. Yeah, I'm going to come to that in a minute. Now, normally at this point of the show, I'd be saying, let's have a look at what's been happening in the world on YouTube this week. And then something would come in, there'd be me going like this, and then there'd be a static, and then I'd be like, you know, Coventry! And some twat has done something stupid. And there'd be a bit of footage of somebody doing something stupid with appropriate music playing underneath. But to be honest, this fortnight, I haven't made one. The reason is, I know, and I know it's disappointing to everybody, and I actually quite enjoy making them, but there was so much happened in the last fortnight, and it was unfolding right up until this morning. In fact, this afternoon it was still unfolding, and I was overwhelmed with it. So there was nothing. I just couldn't do it, and the reason I couldn't do it
You had
was
performance anxiety.
two words. Two words have been I would almost call it a tsunami of clips have come in this last fortnight, and these two words that I would say were responsible for this tsunami of clips would be first word Jason, second word Burns.
Wow.
Jason Burns. He's
Who'd have thunk?
Yeah.
Interesting fortnight for Jason. It started with he posted a video saying he posted a couple of videos where he was quite down. Then he went on Len's show on.
That's right. He's on the Awesome Crew show with us.
Yeah, came on, took his top off on that show.
Yeah.
Was quite affable, you know, and he
Shared
reached
his
out to him.
terrifyingly large nipples with the
Yeah,
world.
he told us that his nipples were plate-sized and that he didn't like.
Bizarre.
But the thing is,
Right.
actually, I think his nipples are normal size, but he's quite small.
Not as small as Fiona, though.
Yeah, he's compact.
He's got an inch on Fiona.
He's got a whole inch. Yeah, he's an inch taller than you, Fiona, apparently.
Is it he's 5 foot then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I could have wondered what I'd like to be smaller because it'd be interesting to see the world like that. Either smaller or much taller.
But think about the fact that you'd be. I mean, poor Fee's about ball height for everything. The world must smell terrible.
Yeah.
Well, Jason may only be half an inch on Fiona, but it's better than me. I only have an inch.
Oh.
Aww.
But
Place the holes in the right place.
The thing is, I've got to live close to my feet,
That's true.
and it is a really upsetting prospect.
You have to keep them clean.
You see, what people don't know about Fiona is that in all of her hangouts, she always looks the same way. She's actually standing up right now.
And her sofa's just really, really tall.
She's standing on a bench.
It's a normal-sized sofa. Fiona's just standing up.
Oh, I'm just small. Diamonds don't come the size of bricks.
She's sitting on a horse. Anyway, back to Jason Burns before we actually get on to the topic of the show. So Jason went on the hangout, was all out football, was very, very nice. Then the next day posted a video going, and then the next day he kind of then suddenly turned against everybody. Made a video saying he was leaving YouTube because he'd been bullied off. He did look a little bit like he was three sheets to the wind in the one. He was like, so he said he was going to leave YouTube, and this was like a half-hour video. He said he was going to leave YouTube, and he wasn't going to come back unless he got personal email from Thunderfoot that he was safe to return. Now, then yeah, so gets very confusing at this point because by that point, with just 2 or 3 videos, I had more than enough footage for maybe half an hour's worth of what's happened on the internet this week. With little 10-second clips, and it would have been each one. And the thing is, I had this planned out. Each one was going to start out with Manchester and Jason Burns, and then the next one would be like the north of England and Manchester. It'd be just over and over again, and then people would start to get the idea. Then maybe I would have cut to like somewhere else just for one bit. But then, so he did this video, and we thought, okay, well, he'll be back tomorrow. But then nothing from him for a day, and then nothing from him for the next day. Then 2.5 days later, I suddenly get a Skype message from a guy who goes under the name Nistuk. I believe he's Canadian. He goes, fucking hell, streaming live now on Atheism Examined. So I put it on, and it was spectacular. A 2-hour live broadcast from Jason, where he rambled incoherently. He talked about himself as being the greatest at everything. Said how he'd beaten all the atheists. Sat for a good 20 minutes looking out of his window. Showed us all his books. Boasted a bit more, and then went and.
No, he farted as well.
Oh, he farted, yeah, and then he said, "Oh, bit of a raspberry."
He said that I kissed DPR Jones's nipples.
That's right. Yeah. You're a nipple-kissing chameleon.
For fuck's sake, you have
chameleon.
Yeah, he said that practically everybody on. I think the people who got off lightly on this one were Mark and Peter, who didn't get mentioned. I think everybody else on the panel got described as evil. We all got insulted.
Yeah, we all got slapped around.
I think maybe he mentioned you, Kat, but in that kind of like that woman who complained about nothing or whatever. It's like, oh. So this went on. Then he did a Nazi salute at
a German
guy who goes under the name Make It Explicit, who is German.
Jawohl.
Yeah, combined that with a Jawohl at the same time.
Most crappy LMLO voice.
Yeah. So then by this point, I'm thinking, fucking hell, how am I going to make a fortnight worth of clips from this? Then that evening, he then goes on a live hangout with Make It Explicit and denied that he'd done the Nazi salute.
Despite,
and got actually quite irate with Make It Explicit for saying he'd done a Nazi salute. Going, well, that's just disgusting. It just shows how poor your ability to debate is if you're going to start doing that. And I'm not going to debate with somebody like that. So he did that, and then he kind of came back the next day and said he's going to do a show with another Christian apologist. Now, he also said that the reason he'd come back and done this 2-hour rant was because he had received a letter from Thunderfoot's representative, a detailed report from Thunderfoot's representative. He didn't show us this, and he didn't tell us what was in it. And he said, "Oh, it's been it's very, very detailed." And he said he had received it. Now, the next day, he identified the person who the report had come from as being Hogtie Champ, who appears on the Magic Sandwich show with Thunderfoot. And I mentioned this to Hogtie Champ on Skype, and he was like, "What report? I've not sent him a report. What's he talking about?" I think his words may have been something like, "What the fuck's he playing at now?" And it was everybody was just like astounded because he said this thing that it just didn't make any sense. He must have known he was going to be rumbled as a liar on this.
Either that or someone pranked him, since it was April Fool's Day.
It was April Fool's Day, yeah. And then, so he deleted those videos, but they were archived elsewhere. Then the whole story...
Wait, so this is just up to Tuesday?
Yeah, this is up to Tuesday.
We're not even kind of done. We're not even close.
Then today, he kind of went a little bit quiet. He's made this video saying he's going to do these videos with a Christian apologist. And then he's made a video today, and a half-hour video, appealing directly to President Obama.
This one.
Because he watches his channel.
Yeah, because he's like, President
Cameron.
President, I know you've got issues in the Urals and with the Crimeans, but really, Jason Burns, for the crisis room. And it's like straight to
the Obama-mobile.
Yeah, they drive the Obama-mobile straight to the, it's like Batman. Okay. And the little Obama symbol will go woo out the screen. He'd be there.
In the description of the video.
Boom!
In the description, he's actually put Jason Bourne's addresses the American nation.
Amazing.
No, the best part is that he goes on to say in that bit that this is the most important speech any of you have ever heard. It's more important than anything JFK said or Martin Luther King or a number of other people. These words will be immortalized forever.
I think he also said it's more important than the Declaration of Independence and the Declaration of Human Rights and stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is the man who has previously said in videos that nobody in their right mind would address the president, and you'd have to be insane to think that that was genuine. So it's been quite. So that is my long way of explaining why there isn't a video section. But the upshot of this is I have decided that with a title supplied by Cat, I am going to make a little kind of mini documentary that will be part of the Aristocrats kind of uploads, which will be called Burns Notice.
The Aristocrats present.
Yeah, the Aristocrats presents Burns Notice, and it will really kind of go over because since about Christmas, the Burns story has ramped up to a whole new level, and it's very, very difficult to work out what the hell's going on. So what I want to do is make a kind of thing with clips from videos and try and be fairly even-handed and not point fingers and not say, look at this lunatic or look at this lunatic or this person's to blame or that person's to blame. I kind of just want to present it almost in his own words and try and work out some narrative around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been an annus horribilis for Mr. Burns. But so anyway, we do have a topic this week. do you want to say something about the topic there, Chris?
So we are going to talk about the future. And sorry, I just had an alarm go off.
We're not going to get there at this rate. So.
We're going to talk about the future. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we had already taken care of the meaning of life. We had already taken care of death and dying and aging, and we are about to take care of talking about the future and what the future holds. And as a self-identified secular humanist, I admit that even though I am not going to procreate, I want the world to be a better place for everybody. More specifically, my nephews and nieces, but everybody else too.
And it's and I think it is a case of it's kind of always weird to think that we're kind of living at the pointy end of history. It's not like there are people living further in the future than us. We are currently the furthest forward that mankind has ever lived. And
that's a scary thought.
That is a scary thought. And also, the weird thing is we have spun so many stories as a species, in the last 100 years or whatever, that could have seemed to link the future with the end of mankind and the end of the world and all this kind of stuff. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to try and look at it from a slightly more positive and hopeful point of view.
Well, as a species, we are doomed to go extinct. You do realise that?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a long way away.
Yeah, not in our lifetime.
No, really.
Alex, do you realise that you've got a Bond villain sitting beside you?
Oh yes, cat with the cat. Yeah, got the white cat. Yes, cat with a cat. But yeah, I think because it's very easy to fall into the narratives of. I think I've said narratives quite a lot, haven't I? But it's quite easy to fall into that kind of looking at the world and going, ooh, doom and gloom. Like this week there was stories about saying, oh, look at the bison fleeing from Yellowstone, which then
they do every day.
Every day.
Every year.
When it's like, oh, they're fleeing from Yellowstone. Does this mean they know that the super volcano is going to go? We're all going to be dead in a week? It's like, well, one thing, in the clip they're fleeing towards the volcano, and they do it every day according to the park rangers. They go in and out of the park all day long, and there's nothing unusual about it.
Because I've been watching them on a webcam, because I've been watching the live feed of Old Faithful. And I've been watching the buffalo in the vicinity, and just before Old Faithful goes off, the buffalo that are there will wander off. But for the rest of the time, I'm just sitting there watching a buffalo poop.
This is a species. This is a species that allowed itself to get shot almost into extinction.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're the smartest animals in the world.
Lee, I too want a jetpack, for the record.
Yeah, somebody in the comments has said, Lee Mitchell has said, the future, I want a jetpack. Now, that's the kind of future that I'm thinking about.
Well, you'll be able to buy one soon. There's a guy in New Zealand making them.
I so want one of those.
There is a problem with the jetpack, though, and the problem is this. Once you run out of fuel, you don't glide down. you suddenly become the weight of yourself plus a heavy jetpack.
Details. That's the detail.
Suddenly things get... you're suddenly in a whole lot of trouble very quickly. It's a bit like a helicopter when it goes wrong. You know,
There's been a lot of helicopter wrong lately.
There has. Helicopters are... I think, you know, maybe we've got to get rid of helicopters.
Nah.
Maybe the future doesn't feature helicopters. But so yeah, I was kind of thinking, you know, positive ways of looking at the future, assuming we don't fuck ourselves up.
Far into the future.
What's that?
Said I am excited about quite far into the future.
What excites you about far into the future, Kat?
Well, I hope Ian Banks is right. I want to be part of the culture, motherfucker.
That would be good.
Post-scarcity, no laws. I mean, one of the things I was talking to Len about when I was explaining what tonight was about was I said that where will we stand when we hit post-scarcity? Will there be, for instance, a need for religion when the sheltered masses no longer have to be afraid of everything because they have nothing? So yes.
Yeah, it's. I'm trying to find actually the file I had on my phone because there was. No, I'm not going to play the file that just has Jason Burns going, "I have immense penis." I'm looking for an audio file I have somewhere. It was a guy. I was listening to Radio 4, and they had a guy on Eddie Mair, on PM, and I don't think I've got the name of the guy. James Burke is a futurologist.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Burke.
Yeah, and he's
done some brilliant stuff. The day the universe changed, Connections. He's a brilliant man.
That's what I thought. I know him from Connections. I read a bunch of those books, saw a bunch of those episodes.
His predictions are very good.
If you ever get to see, you can download it. The Day the Universe Changed. I thoroughly recommend it. It's an absolutely brilliant series. Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I shall make a note on a piece of paper. So I do actually have some to hand. Student loan deferment. That'll do. So the Day the Universe Changed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. James Burke. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
So I was listening to him on Radio 4, and he was talking. He'd done a prediction like 30 years ago or something on Radio 4, and he'd been talking about what life would be like this year, or 2013 as it was. And they were saying, what will it be like then? And he said, well, I think we'll be using network computers, and there'll be a lot of them in the world. And what he described then was almost exactly like the world is now. And what he was talking about on this show was saying that the next thing that he predicts coming along in the next few years is what he was calling nano factories that were kind of 3D printers but at a molecular level. Mm-hmm. And he said that all you'll need to make anything you want with these things, if you're willing to then assemble it, to make the parts, all you need is a bit of dirt, a bit of water and some air. And this thing will be able to pull what it needs from the molecules in those things, reassemble the whole thing, and give you something at the end. He said, so if you want a block of gold, you'll be able to just tell this thing to build one at a molecular level.
But by the time we have these things, we're not going to need blocks of gold, because having nanofactories really does spell the post-scarcity beginnings.
Yeah, and he was talking about saying how one of the side effects of this will be that if you get to the point when you've got one, you could technically build another by telling it to build the parts for another. So that they're then easy to manufacture for other people, and all you need, as I say, is dirt, air, and water. So everybody theoretically would be able to have one of these things. So you wouldn't need to go to the shops to buy food. You wouldn't need to. All the things you need, you'd just be able to generate yourself, just where you are. And he was saying that one of the side effects is it completely twat capitalism. The whole kind of way the commercial world is run will have proper problems. But it was an interesting concept because it was talking about what would happen once we're suddenly post-scarcity, if something like that happens, if we have the ability to do these things.
Do you think post-scarcity is something that will come on suddenly and all at once, or do you think we'll creep up to it? That sounds almost like a full stop.
Yeah.
It's an outside context sort of possibility instead of problem.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's something that would happen over the space of a few years. But I think in kind of terms of how long we've been around as a species, I think. Well, he said that the way James Burke was saying it was saying in the next 50 years, the changes that mankind will go through in terms of technology and stuff will be greater than the changes we've had between the Stone Age and now.
Yeah.
Mm.
I can see massive problems with that.
Yeah,
that's
so
pretty much always been the way, though. It's exponential. It always has been.
But you're saying you'd see problems with it, Fiona?
Yeah, I see mega problems with that.
Yeah, so do I. But
because you might have you and me saying, well, okay, make me a loaf of bread today, or new set of curtains, or whatever. But somewhere there's going to be somebody saying, well, make me a suicide vest, make me a bazooka, make me a nuclear weapon.
But then at the same time, there could be somebody saying...
But to be fair, you can't say, make me a nuclear weapon. You can say, make me the bits I'll need to build a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
So you still have to know how to build it.
Yeah.
But you can see where it would lead.
The thing is, once we hit a certain point, what is there to kill each other over? Because we won't be killing each other over oil, because we can make oil.
Religion.
We're humans. We will always find an excuse to kill each other. That's no problem.
I didn't say that we won't, but the whole have and have-nots is going to be a big...
It'll be a very abstract. It'll be a very abstract battle. In the same way that droning is a very abstract military approach.
But
the
imagine
reason
that
why
in the hands
we
of the
war.
Westboro Baptists.
Say that again.
Imagine that in the hands of the Westboro Baptists.
Or being able to make drones or...
Being able to kill...
Yeah, but by the time... Here's what I'm thinking. By the time we get to that technology, because James Burke, if he was talking about that occurring by this year, he's off. But by the time it does happen, we might be at a completely different place, because as soon as a prototype of something like that occurs, there will be news about it.
Yeah.
And the news will change culture. And I'm not saying that it'll change it in such a way that we will all love each other, but it will change it in such a way that people will have to rethink what it is they want to be angry with each other for, right? And it can't be these base element survivalist variables like land, money, not property, but assets. Yeah. So, we're still going to war, but we're going to do it over much more abstract things.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with that point, though, we kind of already are. I mean, like Chris was saying, we're animals, and as animals, we tend to compete for things, namely food, safety, and women. And, not so much women, but members of the opposite sex, for the opportunity to reproduce. These are the things that animals commonly fight over, and we more or less do the same thing now. But we've become so good at surviving that we've found weird and alternate ways of hating each other because it's so built into our mechanisms to be competitive. We've got things like homophobia and racism. We found different ways to make people different from us, so that we get to hate them, and it's human nature to do it, and we like to try and eliminate that part of our characters as often as we can. But it's still there. I don't see it's just because we've got
tribalism, and it's just a matter of in groups and out groups, and we've always done it.
Yeah.
If you're in the in group, you're safe, and everybody else is in the out group, whoever they may be, whatever label you put on them, they're the ones you've got to kill.
And I hate to make it too sci-fi, but let's face it. Who is it? Gene Roddenberry, the author of the Star Trek series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He really kind of addressed that in a fun way. You know what I mean? All right, the Earth is united in some capacity that it is sending explorers to other galaxies, and we are still running into things and stuff that we disagree with, and but we're human and we're still uniting. It's a very, I was never a Trekkie, but of the episodes that I saw, it's a very humanist perspective. Everyone's human-like. I think that there are even backstories where every sentient life that gets to that level is a panspermia kind of idea. That's why everybody looks so similar but slightly different. But But I like the fact that he addresses that. Yeah, we're arguing over abstract things, but maybe not so much. Maybe like the ideas that he has, where if there are other creatures for us to compete with, we would compete over galactic space. I don't know, property, stuff like that, or whatever's valuable in the world that we both find. I don't know, but that's way too far in the future, and that's very sci-fi for me. That's not very grounded in anything. But
we don't necessarily need to talk about grounding, because partially I like the sci-fi element. I want to talk about the far future.
There's a very, very interesting website called Future Timeline. I think it's futuretimeline.net. And the author of that kind of goes through and says the things that he would expect to see happening on a yearly basis for the next... he goes right out to something like 10,000 years. He kind of, after a certain point, he starts kind of skipping centuries and goes, what happens after this, and it starts to get into transhumanism. But certainly with the thing with the James Burke predictions, he's predicting for the next 30 years with the things like the replicator, for want of a better way of putting it. And at the same time, you've got what's his face? He's the
really grumpy one.
No, he's the one that wrote he wrote the book The Singularity is Near. Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil. That's the one.
Kurzweil.
Yeah, Kurzweil. That's it. He is now. Kurzweil is this guy. He's a hardcore futurist. He's one of these guys that wants to see us as a species able to kind of upload our conscious minds into computers if we need to. When we're reaching old age or whatever, be able to have the option to upload ourselves so that we don't consciously die. Our bodies might die, but we can continue on in some form. Now, in a lot of cases, you'd read about that and you'd think, well, this is a guy with a bit pie in the sky. He's never going to be able to achieve it. This guy is, as far as I understand it, is head of product development for Google. Or something like that. So he's kind of as high up
to where you can start making that true.
Yeah, he's in the position where he could actually do it. I mean, he's determined to get this done because he's convinced that the singularity is going to happen. Now, for viewers who aren't aware of what the technological singularity is, as Peter said, development's exponential, and it's the development of technology kind of speeds up based on the last piece of development. So you develop a powerful computer, and that enables you to develop a more powerful computer, which then more powerful, more powerful, more powerful. At the same time, you work out how to make things cheaply. You work out efficient ways of making things, and they become cheaper and cheaper. And the way you look at something like RAM in your computer or hard drives or stuff. Like a gigabyte is now, maybe, I don't know what is it. You work it out. It's less than something like 50p a gigabyte or something to produce RAM, or to produce a hard drive, I should say. So the cost of things goes down at the same time as the power of things goes up, and it goes up exponentially, and it reaches a certain point where beyond that point you can't guess what's going to happen next, and it's usually tied in with the occurrence of artificial intelligence and proper nanotechnology and all this kind of thing. And Kurzweil has been saying that this thing's going to happen within our lifetimes. He thinks it's going to be something that we're going to see within the next 30, 40 years, and it's a I've talked long enough on this. Somebody else
if there are any musicians out there, this is the same Ray Kurzweil whose Kurzweil keyboard you might be using. He was able to synthesize like orchestras and sound files and trigger them electronically on the keyboard, and the Kurzweil is his invention. So he's just like, he's all over the place. He's a jack of, not a jack. He's a Renaissance man of science.
Yeah, I think he might be wrong on this particular point, though. The singularity is theoretically possible, but like time travel, I don't think we're ever going to get there. It's one of those things. The technical hurdles you have to leap to get somebody's personality as a file. Say, you imagine you've got to convert a complex thing like a personality into a digital file. It's not as easy as what it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, actually, on that point real quick, I read a book a number of years ago, I think it was back in 2008. It was published in 2008, I remember that much, and I'm just trying to remember the guy who wrote its name, and he's a physicist, and his name I'm going to butcher right now, live on the air, but I want to say it's Mikio Kaku. Is that
Michio
close?
Kaku.
There you
Kaku.
go. He wrote a book called Physics of the Impossible, and it's a fabulous book, and I thoroughly recommend everyone read it. But the short version is the book's about everything that we could potentially make in the future, and how likely or unlikely it is to that we could actually produce this. There was class 1 impossibilities. These are technologies that are impossible as we are today, but in the future it's very possible we could make them. Class 2 are things that we're right on the edge of being able to start doing, and there's class 3, which is where it's simply not going to happen, so get over it. But time travel and teleportation he had listed as class 2 impossibilities, things that we are right on the edge of starting to be able to figure out.
Interesting.
For the future, yeah.
Well, he's wrong.
Well, what the hell does he know?
Well, I mean, for example, he said, I've just pulled it up here on Wikipedia. It says traveling through time would require the entire energy of a star or black hole.
Exactly
And,
right.
You've got a massive question of stability.
Yep.
I just want to quickly say
the
something.
radiation from the trip would kill you as well.
Yeah, Mark keeps wanting to say things, but his mic's buggered.
Sorry, Mark.
Mark, you're here as part of the team, and we can't hear you.
Type them in, Mark, and we'll try and say them in your accent. And
I'll read what he's just said. He said, "Narsan and Mike is wankered, not worth it. I get a word every few seconds." Ha! Just a little bit. There he is. He appeared. You see, as long as Mark's here, then I like Mark being here. Though.
Mr. President.
Stay, Mark. Presence. Yeah, there you go. You see. So certain things. I think my take on the singularity is I'm more optimistic than you are, Peter, about it. I think that if we can, they're already starting to figure out how to map small amounts of kind of brain tissue, and it's one of these things that once you've figured out the little bit, then often seems to be the case that once you've figured out the beginnings and gone, oh, that's how you do it, scaling it up suddenly becomes much easier. So I don't know. That's my take on that. But teleportation, I'm a bit shady about teleportation.
No chance.
Apparently, we are able to teleport information at the atomic level.
Yes. Yes.
Would you want to be? Well, so okay. Now this is something that I thought this for a very long time, and I was very pleased when I read this same thing in a book by China Mieville, with a character in the book. It's a book called Kraken, and there's a character in it who's a Star Trek fan who can teleport himself, but he's slowly gone insane because he's haunted, and he is haunted by dozens of ghosts of himself.
Yeah.
And the reason being,
the paradox of teleportation is when you recreate yourself at a distance, you have to destroy the original.
yes,
And does that mean you're killing yourself?
yes, and that's exactly what happens in the book. So,
There's all sorts of problems involved that become not philosophical material. It's really quite complex.
Well, I mean, they even addressed it in Star Trek by having a copy not actually destroyed at the point of origin.
the beam bounces off a cloud, and you get two Rikers. You get full beard Riker and goatee beard Riker. You know,
you get the evil one and the good one. Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember that from the very first Star Trek series.
Then they had
When we got a good Jim and a bad Jim back.
Yeah.
And there was a wee dog with a unicorn horn, and there was a nice one and the nasty one.
Fantastic. You see, this is the thing. So I think the main problem you'd have is that with a teleporter, so imagine you've invented the teleporter, you've sent animals through it, they've apparently come out fine at the other end, and they respond to their names and everything, so you think, this is fine. You do tests on them, they are the same animals, so you think, this is great. So eventually the scientist goes, I'm going to have a go. So the scientist steps into the teleporter, he is instantly killed, but an exact copy of him with his memories steps out the other end. People go, are you all right? Did it work? And he goes, yes, I'm fine. Because the person who stepped out the other end, despite being completely new, thinks they are the original person. But as far as I can see, the consciousness of the individual would be stopped at that point, just as sure as if you've been killed.
Yeah, you teleport consciousness. Yeah,
exactly. So unless consciousness exists
in the
physical organization of the atoms in our brain, in which case, if you cloned yourself exactly, you would have two that had the exact same consciousness, which would be weird. But unless that happens, there's no way I'd take the bus.
No.
You hate buses, though.
I'm not volunteering.
You can't stand to get on buses. No. You don't even like taking short bus rides because you fear you'll have to pee.
It's a genuine concern.
Tie a note in it.
Ladder of a puppy. So, but how is what you're saying, Alex, not a materialistic explanation of what consciousness is? A materialistic explanation would be that it is a manifest of the way that neurons work, and neurons work by material.
And I think that, to my mind, would be, I think, as Peter's saying, I mean, to my mind, that would represent what the paradox of it is that, from my point of view, is, yeah, it's entirely material, but that thread of continuous experience is what makes us alive. Now,
but that new person would be you.
But the person, the consciousness that you currently have, would stop just as surely as if you died. Now, the other way I've looked at this, though, is when I go to sleep every night, there's periods when I'm not conscious of anything at all. So am I waking up each morning with a new consciousness that's based on memories of my previous version of myself every day? I don't know if I'm expressing that very well, but is it almost as if the little kind of thread of consciousness that we have stops when you're unconscious and a new one boots up overnight, and because it's got all your memories, you just assume that it's a continuous experience?
Well, that's a funny question. Go ahead, Peter.
I say, in a sense, that happens over your entire lifetime, because no atom in your body you have right now is the same as it was 20 years ago. Every atom is replaced eventually, so you're constantly replacing everything in your body, brain cells, everything over time. So you constantly rebuilding yourself. But the problem I was going to get to is we've never yet built a machine of any sort that's perfect.
No.
It never glitches. It never makes a mistake. So what happens if in a teleporter when it makes one tiny little mistake?
Oh my God! You'd have to calibrate it.
Yeah.
You would have to. How would you calibrate it?
Does anybody remember that
the product is the same as the original by at least by a 1% difference maximum.
There's going to be a margin of error, and there are going to be quantum fluctuations that you can't take into account, that are going to cause all sorts of problems.
Does anybody remember the bit in Star Trek when the transporter went wrong, and the famous line from Scotty was, "What we got back didn't live long, Captain."
Yes. Yeah.
That's one of those bits that sticks in my mind, because it's almost, in a way, a bit like The Fly, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, have you guys seen Galaxy Quest?
Oh, who hasn't?
Yes. Great, funny.
It's the Inside Out pig.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that, Alex?
I don't. I'll have to watch that again because I don't remember the Inside Out.
Yeah, because they're trying to trick. Obviously, they've based all of their technology off of watching Galaxy Quest shows, and they make a transporter and they're trying to use it for the first time, and they decide to beam up a pig, and the pig gets beamed up inside out but still moving.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. But it's like what Peter was saying. I've just brought it up on another screen. It's the whole thing of the ship of Theseus, isn't it? Where over time, every part of it was replaced.
Mm-hmm. It's still the same ship.
Still the original.
Yeah, or the broom of the guy in The Vicar of Dibley, who is saying how he's had this broom for 13 years or 17 years or whatever, and in that time it's had 11 handles and 12 heads, but it's the same broom.
Well, we were discussing at one point, obviously Alex and I are both big sci-fi fans, specifically of Ian Banks, who unfortunately has recently passed away. But he has the concept of the culture, which is a post-scarcity society. A whole bunch of they're the anti-Star Trek people because they like to meddle.
They're not the Federation. They get involved. They have They have no prime directive. They just turn up and meddle. If they think they can improve things, they will just improve things.
But they have the whole concept of a matrix that you can be uploaded into. So that if you die, you're basically woken back up as a copy. But we were discussing whether or not you could be uploaded into something and still technically keep that thread of consciousness. And we were discussing it sort of in the way of the ship of Theseus. Is could you slowly move a tiny bit of yourself at a time into the computer until all of you was there and have an unbroken thread?
Yeah, I think that's the only way you could do it, because you have to. Because I mean, again, it'd be again coming exactly back to what Peter said about, you know, we replace every part of our body is completely different. If you shunt a little bit at a time, like you're almost like, you know, copying one bit of data at a time across, so that for a brief period you've got like, you know, 10% of your brain processing is being handled by the artificial system, and 90% is your brain, and it slowly kind of moves across. If you're conscious throughout that whole experience and you don't lose that thread of consciousness, are you then technically still yourself when you come out the other end, if you're uploaded into something?
And then you're immortal.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you just said that, because I was just going to point out that a lot of the things that we've been talking about having to do with the future don't necessarily have to do with future generations as much as it has to do with maintaining us in the future, right? And I think that's a weird concept, because I remember when I was in grad school and we had a course on ethics and science ethics, medical ethics, and just like, you know, just weird scenarios would come up, and the desire for eternal life was one of them. Like, I think that's a weird. I don't want to live forever. That sounds like a nightmare to me. You know what I mean? Like the whole.
Respectfully, sir, I would just. Sorry to interrupt. My apologies. I would just say that I honestly don't think I would mind living forever for two very small reasons. Firstly, I think I'm awesome, and I don't think the world could have enough of me. And secondly,
I think that too.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy. You should think about yourself too. Come on. And secondly, I don't think that there's I don't think there's a point which I could say, okay, I've learned enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no point at which I could say, okay, I've learned enough. I know enough now. I want to know more. I think it's bloody tragedy I get to live into my 70s, probably 50s, and then my ability to learn will just end.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that's sort of discussed a lot in Banks' work, is the idea that a lot of people put themselves essentially into storage or basically die for a period of time and say, only under these criteria do I want to be woken up again, because people get sick of existing. So you set basically a big cosmic alarm clock saying, okay, only if X, Y, or Z happens are you to revive me.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, because in the books they can technically, if they choose to, you can be technically immortal. But
people get bored.
The oldest, the last book he wrote featured the oldest living person in the culture, who was something like 900 years old. And the culture had been around for quite a long time. Or maybe was he more than that? Was he a few thousand years old? But he wasn't colossally ancient.
Yeah, because people get too bored and don't.
Yeah, and people get bored, and I think that's what would happen. I would find immortality. I think if there was no chance of being able to choose to stop it, I think that would drive me absolutely up the wall. I think if you could say, okay, I've had enough, I can either switch myself off for a bit, I can skip the next 2 centuries, I can, like Kat says, I can set criteria to only be woken up if these events happen, then I think that could be interesting. But I think if you had a continuous living experience, you'd maybe, 400 or 500 years would be starting to get unbearable.
If population growth is exponential, where are you going to put all these people anyway? I mean,
but we're talking about sort of in the idea of being in. It's not called a matrix in the thing. What's it called?
They have the neural net that they upload.
Yeah.
They can upload into. They're backed up.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think of what it is that they're in.
Oh, they're in a virtual reality, aren't they? Kind of.
Yeah.
Substrate. There we go.
But presumably they're going to be in some building in some storage bank somewhere.
Yeah.
What happens if it has a power fade?
Well, that's assuming we can't transfer that information onto tiny microchips. Then we just need.
That's the idea, is that they're put into sort of a virtual reality and then downloaded basically back into a body.
Yeah.
If you want to physically exist again.
But Peter's question brings up a very interesting step of something that I wanted to bring up next, really, which was, where do we go once we've started to get this population growth? And it neatly brings us to
space.
Mars. which is where we're starting to look at going. You know, and that is something that we've reached the point where there's very serious planning going on to send people to Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Well, that's
And
what
why not the moon?
I was going to bring up, which is, well, we're talking about the future, and you're talking about future developments and all the rest of it. We've also got to look at the future of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
For all you know, in the next couple of years, we could end up being a direct line of a gamma ray burst.
Yes.
Or Yellowstone might go off.
Or we could just run out of resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's so many.
That's the Malthusian.
Meteor. I mean, there's so many catastrophic things that could happen on a global scale.
The elder gods could wake up.
Yeah, well, there is that.
Cthulhu could come.
So I mean, you would need to think about, well, what would we do if this planet got absolutely knackered?
Well, I think the first order of business has to be finding a energy source which is abundant and renewable and cheap, so that everyone gets it. That I think has to be the first port of call if you're going to really ensure the survival of our species for more than the next couple of thousand years.
Well, I think James Burke, again talking about James Burke, is one of the things he mentioned was saying that solar, from as far as he's concerned, solar power is going to become the thing that's going to be driving everything in the next 20 or so years. Mm-hmm. And he says his reason for saying that is because the market will make that essential, because it will become cheaper to generate power via solar energy than to generate it from fossil fuels.
Uh-huh. It's getting cheaper and cheaper every day as solar panels and solar cells get more and more efficient, and the production, it's getting cheaper and cheaper.
That's just something I saw in the news. Was to bring it back to the beginning of the show. I didn't end up reading the article, but I did see the headline basically that they've been able to use sort of rainbow cells to exponentially improve the efficiency of solar panels.
Like genetic cells from actual rainbows?
Well, you use a pot of gold, right, and you get some.
Why did you go there? Why did you go there? Why did you do a pot of gold? Why did you do that?
Yeah.
Because you're an electrical. You know all about these things.
I'll call my cousins.
But yeah, this whole idea that and it's right, because as fossil fuels become more expensive, and as solar power becomes cheaper and cheaper, you get kind of close to the point where they match, and the reliance is still going to be on fossil fuels at that point. But as soon as it gets to the point where it costs more to power things with fossil fuels than it does to use solar power, people are going to go, fuck this, I'm not using petrol. It's going to be the electricity is going to start coming from that. You'll see a bigger take-up of electric vehicles. It will make no sense to stay with fossil fuel at that point.
Yeah.
And the companies that make their money from selling fossil fuel products will also be going, well, fuck it, there's no point in staying in this industry. I thought it's quite interesting when British what does BP stand for? Was it British Petroleum it used to be?
Yeah.
They've now started to kind of like move that towards beyond petroleum. You know, it's like there's this
away from Britain.
When you see the oil companies start to talk about electric vehicles and solar power and stuff, you know that we've possibly reached a point where oil is irredeemably fucked.
Yeah, it is.
And we have to move into something else. Now, if we can successfully do that, and we don't reach a point like where we've hit peak oil, and we don't have the resources to then go on to the next stage, because if we run out of resources before we can do it, then we are fucked beyond words, and there's no recovery in place.
I found the thing I was talking about. Rainbow Catching Wave Guide could revolutionize energy technologies. Phonetic research at the University of Buffalo may lead to more efficient photovoltaic cells, improving radar and stealth technology, and even a new way to recycle waste heat generated by machines into energy. So, and this was something that came out today. It says the work Broadband Absorption Engineering of Hyperbolic Metafilm Patterns was published 28th of March in the journal Scientific Reports. Explores the use of nanoscale microchip components called a multilayered waveguide taper array that improves the chip's ability to trap and absorb light. So
this thing,
we could suddenly make solar energy a lot better.
And the thing that goes back to what Chris was saying about, because we were talking about the whole idea of being able to maintain these computers that would have uploaded. Say you could upload a human consciousness, and it was the same person in their mind, and they were living in a virtual reality. And obviously the problem is, as Peter again pointed out correctly, and I seem to be citing Peter a lot this evening, but Peter's been on the money with these things. As Peter pointed out, these things have got to be somewhere. But the thing is, I was reading again another thing a couple of years ago, saying that starting to look at working out how to put what you'd need to have very basic computing into kind of paints and things like that. The stuff that would be then you could spray substances onto the outside of your house, which is effectively a very thin line of where are you typing that? Oh, there you go. Oh yeah, I can see. A very thin membrane of this stuff on just paint onto the outside of your house, but it's formed of kind of nano computing components that are powered by the sunlight or the heat or whatever, and you could theoretically create a kind of area that these things could exist in. That
sort of like solar moss.
Yeah, like a solar moss or whatever that's sort of sitting there. So we're right on the cusp of all these little things. And it seems that a lot of them are kind of converging at around the same time. And as long as we don't fuck ourselves irredeemably, then we get there. But there's an interesting question that rises from this. And do interrupt me if I'm
No, it's fascinating. Keep going.
Taking the whatever. Imagine.
I do have a question. So long as we don't fuck ourselves irredeemably. Explain to me how fucking yourself redeemably looks like.
Well, if you fuck yourself redeemably, okay, I can actually answer that, which is because I never really thought about it before, because it's just a thing I say. But I can actually answer that. Fucking yourself redeemably means you can come back from it. So you've fucked the ice caps, but you can regrow them, or something like that. Or you've done something that we can bounce back from. So that's how you would. So that you're not so smart now, are you, Mouty? You got me. I got you. I took you down. But here's the question. Say we have reached a point where we may not have hit the singularity, but we've hit what is fairly post-scarcity. Things are a lot more balanced than they were. We've managed to get people onto Mars and set up viable colonies there, and have maybe even started kind of either terraforming within larger craters, or have started kind of looking at terraforming the planet itself. And we're at a point where we can continue. What role does religion then hold in that world? Once the risks that religion was almost designed to address and to give people hope that they'd be able to avoid the problems of the future, when those problems are no longer a problem, it's like Paul Baird of the Left Field, the Left Field show said. He wrote on his blog saying that if you get Muslims on Mars, where do they bow to? The seasons are all wrong as well. So when do you have your religious holidays? Because the Martian year is like 600 plus days. The day is 24 hours and 40 minutes long or something. So everything's thrown off a little bit. And how do you then adjust to that? And does that cause the death of religion, or does it cause religion to adapt into a new form?
Always has.
I think that even if religion goes away, the dogmatic part of religion that we all kind of hate, is still going to exist in a different level. Like I've used this analogy before, but South Park made an awesome episode of what the future would look like if there was no religion and atheists hated each other because they misinterpreted how to use the scientific method, or stuff like that.
Yeah. You're already seeing that on at the moment, where we get these arguments between PZ Myers and everybody, and all this crap that's going on, and it's already happening.
Atheism plus and stuff. So you think we still find ways to factionalize within kind of issues.
I think that we're some of us as a population, the fringes of the bell curve kind of lean towards dogma in one way, shape, or form. And so long as there's a bell curve, there will be the fringe.
Yeah.
It's hardwired into us. We've evolved with it, and it's just part of our nature.
Yeah.
I think also a big part of religion is the answering of questions. If you look into human psychology, you'll discover very quickly that every human is subject to hating confusion. Your brain just hates to be fucking confused. And if you can't find the correct answer, your brain's perfectly happy to make up a ridiculous one for you so you'll alleviate the confusion. No, it happens all the time. So let's say we terraform a brand new planet. Let's imagine a planet right now and we terraform it. But things, as Alex was saying, the rotation around the sun is different, seasons are different, maybe there are life forms you don't quite recognize, so now we're in a brand new environment where we're not really sure how everything works. It would be my submission that in no time we would find something to worship, much like a religion, just to alleviate the fear of the world around us, something that we could pray to, kind of try and appease, try and create a rule structure so that if we stayed inside the rules, everything will be fine. It would be religion, but a whole new religion. Old religion wouldn't adapt. We'd just make a new one.
Well, in the and I've mentioned this to Chris before. In the Mars trilogy by the author Kim Stanley Robinson, that talks at length about colonizing Mars over a period of several hundred years, and he writes it so that the characters, they develop a way of living for a lot longer. They don't become immortal, but they can live for hundreds of years. So you see the first 100 colonists arriving, setting up their very basic camps. They get there, and what's happened to prepare for arrival? They've, over the previous 20 years, whatever, they've sent other things to Mars, so that there's already machinery there waiting for them. So when they arrive, they've got the tools to start building a shelter and all this kind of stuff. And it goes right from that right through to right at the end of the trilogy, some kind of 1,800 pages later. They have got a breathable atmosphere and oceans and, soil and plants and animals living on the planet and all this kind of stuff. So they've turned it into a fully terraformed world. But in that, there's kind of factions that go off into kind of religious ideas. They have a part of the original 100 have this whole kind of idea that Mars itself should almost be kept pure, and you shouldn't terraform it. And some of these people, they go under the name Mars First, this Mars First faction, that kind of try to blow up things that are, enabling the terraforming to go on. They try to sabotage things. You get another lot that say that you should be able to live with Mars, and they kind of put roofs over domes instead of trying to terraform the whole planet. So you get these factions, and it becomes almost like religions. And I can imagine that happening. I think we're absolutely right on this. Is that as a species, we're very good at finding ways of.
Well, we're pattern seeking.
Yeah. So we're very good at
making shit up.
Well, it's the reason why we see ghosts instead of shadows.
Yeah.
Because we want to identify the shape we've seen. So.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, like, the Philip Zimbardo studies that were done at Stanford, where he assigned some students to be office or to be prison guards and others to be prisoners. Like, circumstances can alter everything as to what you consider an in and out group and what you will do once that indelible line has been made in your psychology.
Do you think there's any kind of, when it comes to science and discovery and technology, do you think there's any kind of moral implications there? Do you think there's anything that we shouldn't be doing or we shouldn't be studying? Or is the sky the limit?
I think we have.
Depends who you ask.
I think we're well beyond the sky there.
Different people will give you different answers to that question. It's
I think we have to work out how to do things, and then I think it's if you're stopping yourself because of ethical issues, then I don't know.
But we are. Well, we're not disposing of humans the way that we're disposing of mice.
Or cloning human beings. I mean, there's lots of ethical reasons you shouldn't do that. But is it going to stop people doing it?
Was the creation of nuclear technology really such a good idea, given what it's cost us, given what it's just cost Japan a number of years ago?
Well, depends if they get fusion. They're working towards fusion reaction. If they get fusion reactors going, then the fission reactors will be a thing of the past anyway. So
See, this it kind of slightly reminds me of 10 years ago on a message board. In fact, it was earlier than 10, about 2000, 2001. I remember being on some message board for a first-person shooter war game, and there was a discussion similar to this, and somebody was saying, they talk about hydrogen fuel cells, and somebody was saying, oh, well, those look interesting, and somebody else, nah, science fiction, that'll never happen. Never going to happen, completely science fiction, it's impossible. Listen to me, I've been in the automotive industry for 40 years, I can guarantee it will not happen. The very next year, they start saying, okay, we've cracked hydrogen fuel cells, and yeah, I think it's, but I think, yeah, this whole thing with changing the way of generating power, it's going to mean that hopefully nuclear power will have just been something, because I mean all it's doing is just making water hot, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all you're going to do. Yeah,
that's a simplest explanation. What it does, it's just a fuel source to make
Nuclear
water
power
hot.
explained. It's all a lot of hot water.
Yeah, that's ultimately your goal, is to turn water into steam, as far as I understand it.
So it's just basically going back to steam power.
Yeah, that's all you do. You use the fusion reaction to heat water, and then that causes the power.
That's right.
And if you can get around the actual kind of hyper dangerous part of that, then
so it's making a giant cuppa for humanity.
Yeah,
but it's basically taking your kettle, and instead of using your little electric filament at the bottom, your little metal filament, replacing it with some radioactive material that will cause the water.
Yellow cake, nice. Yeah.
Yellow cake isn't radioactive. Trust me, I just spent last week at a uranium mine. I can tell you all about yellow cake. It's not radioactive.
And so can your superpowered clone that you came back with. You left there smashing rocks.
Flying away.
Luckily, I didn't get bitten by any spiders or anything, so I should be fine.
Yeah, what you can't see is...
He didn't bite any spiders who now become radioactive Australians.
Yeah, what you can't see is Peter's background is actually, it looks like a wall, but what you can't see under the camera is he's holding up a desk that the wall's attached to, and he's actually floating in the air at the moment, above some part of Central Australia, while nervous-looking soldiers point guns at him. And he's like, I've got a podcast to do, be quiet.
No.
I bet you have a few new rashes that glow in the dark now that are probably pretty interesting.
It's not as bad as you think it is. Trust me. Yeah, it's so yellow cake is not highly radioactive. It has to be concentrated. It's only about they have to actually get the radioactive shit out of it. It's a long story. I won't explain it, but it's not that bad because they run you over with Geiger counters and everything when you leave the camp, and so long as you're not glowing in the dark and you're not setting the Geiger counters off, everything's fine.
So, before we draw things to a close, because I'm aware that we're kind of hitting the kind of 90 minutes mark now, I'd be interested to hear what people would like to see. Assume that mankind succeeds in surviving the next 100 years. What would you like to see happen? And I'd be kind of quite interested to go round everybody. And we'll leave Fiona last because Fiona has gone to take a comfort break, as we call it.
Drop a penny. Spend a penny, as my colleague says.
We're not ashamed of bodily functions here on the Astrocast.
Not at all. She's pooping.
I don't think she was pooping.
She's doing a wee-wee.
You didn't have to take it that far. Yeah, you didn't have to go that far, did you?
Sorry.
She's number one.
We get you on as a guest to talk about the future.
I've embarrassed you. I'm sorry. I've embarrassed you.
Drag it down into poo talk.
I'm sorry. Coming from you?
It's not coming from me, the poo. Not according to you, is it, you weirdo?
To be fair, all Alex talks is shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So let's go round. So let's see. Mark, are you able to say anything on your speakers? Your
Giant
microphone.
cough.
Is it working? Mark's very quiet. I don't think he's working at all. So let's go to Peter then. What would you like to see from the future, assuming we make it into a future?
I want to see fusion reactors working. Basically, I reckon that's the answer. And massive solar energy power stations. And that will help solve a lot of problems.
And then long term?
Well, long term, hopefully colonising Mars, but I can't see that's going to happen. That's really, there's a lot of technical reasons why that's going to be extremely difficult. and we don't run out of resources in the meantime before that happens.
Sounds good.
Having seen the largest uranium mine in the world, and at the rate they're digging that hole out, we're going to run out of resources pretty fucking quick, I can tell you.
Mark has responded. He said that obviously not when it comes to his mic not working. He said he would like to see renewable energy eradicate disease, feed the world properly would be his hopes for the future.
Oh, that's
a nice way to look at it.
Nice.
See, I like this. Mark's here, but he may not be able to talk, but he's able to still type in the side, and whilst that still happens. So let's go to Kat. Kat, what would you like to see for the future?
I want the culture. No, to be honest, there's a lot of stuff in sci-fi that I'd like to see come true. Obviously, I want all the nice shit for humanity that Mark's brought up, but because he's taken all the kumbaya stuff, I'm going to go for sort of post-scarcity bioengineering. I'd like to be able to change genders. That'd be fun.
Could be interesting. Len, you could go next.
I've always wanted to have a dick. Come on!
You do. His name's Alex.
One day, jumping up and down, watching it flop around, being able to write my name in the snow would be fucking awesome. That's what I would do if I had a penis for a day.
That's all we do all day.
I know.
I'd like to see a way that I think that if you look back in history, you'll find out very quickly that human beings tend to do better when we're together, when we're working together, when we work as a team. So if we had a way, some kind of product or some kind of way to unify humanity, and I think that's probably going to be in outer space, some kind of product or some kind of new ability that makes us work together, that almost forces us to set aside the bullshit, bring up people who live in the third world to the same level or better than we are now, and sort of unify humanity under some kind of global umbrella so that we can really ascend to the level that we really deserve to be at. And for the very, very long term, well, hopefully in my lifetime, 2 words, lightsaber.
But they would be so awful.
Nope, I'd cut my toast. I'd make toast with it. Every do is cut an untoasted loaf of bread and just go.
Have you ever seen the Adult Swim where they drop a lightsaber?
No, I haven't.
It's got Obi-Wan and what's his face and what's this from Trainspotting, who is Obi-Wan?
Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, it's got Ewan McGregor and the other guy, Qui-Gon Jinn. So it's Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn are kind of like doing something, and they're outside the door. They foot off some droids, and outside this door, and then I think Obi-Wan drops his lightsaber. He goes shit, he drops it, and it cuts straight through the deck. And just goes straight down. You hear these people going, ah, oh, and he's like looking down through the hole, going, ooh, oh no. And people are going, what the fuck, my arm? And he just keeps on going.
That's kind of great.
But no, I mean, we've discussed, the gritty reboot of sort of Star Wars more than once, because that's like our favorite game.
Yeah.
But the fact is, the closest thing you're going to get is sort of a phosphorus lance thing. And how fucking awful would that be?
It could be just horrendous. But lightsabers are a lightsaber that worked and wasn't horrendous is what you'd like to see.
That's what I would like.
Lightsaber with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fiona, far future, or what would you like to see next, and then the far future?
Everybody's taken every single thing I thought up. So
how about unicorns? Do you want unicorns?
No, I was actually a cure for corns. I've got a corn on my toe that's killing me.
Scientists across the world, stop everything. Corn research must begin.
No, I mean, I would just go along with it. I would just go along with it. Something that brings humanity together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to have to be discovery of extraterrestrial life. As it said in the Pratchett book, in that world, black and white got on fine, and they just ganged up on green. Yeah, and I think that's what humans would do.
An alien invasion would do it nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would like to see an end to poverty on the planet and all the rest of it. But I don't think that'll come until we actually unite under this one banner of "We are humans."
Yeah. So that takes us. I will go last, and I'm going to let Chris go next. What would you like to say?
Cliff?
Oh yeah, Cliff, of course. Oh shit. Oh.
Doesn't Mr. Jumper get to say anything?
Mr. Jumper will get to say something and bring something else in, and also I want Lenny to say something as well about something else. But on this topic, we'll go.
We'll stop talking about his wonky
Chris,
shillelagh.
then we'll go me, then we'll go Cliff, because then Cliff can lead into the next thing, and then we'll go back to Lenny, and then yeah. It makes
So yeah,
sense.
all both Len and Fiona were talking about things that bring humankind together and humanity together, and something we can all rally around and drop the bullshit differences that we have. I already thought that existed, and it was called ecstasy. But anyway. You already stole everything I wanted to say. The main thing I wanted to say was I would love to make making third world nations self-sufficient a main goal, and like truly self-sufficient agriculture. Whatever is needed to get them to non-third world. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, so that their needs are met at least. Not that we want to change them and make them current like us, like maintain their culture, but be self-sufficient if they're not. If they're having problems feeding, if they're having problems growing crops, if they're having problems with this or that, find solutions for that so that they can maintain what the culture that they have. And that also requires that goes contrary to what I'm going to say next, because I am a fan of globalization to a certain extent. I'm hoping that in the next 100 years, because we have such access to people, because we have people from Australia and the UK and America, like hanging out and having a virtual chat right now, like 20 years ago, this is crazy talk. Only on Star Trek would something like this happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or some kind of sci-fi fantasy show. So I'm hoping, and we're becoming more global, more, as a population, in my opinion, refined and understanding and tolerant of what's going on around the world in general. And I hope that trend continues. That's all.
Well, I would say that I would echo what Chris just said about pulling the third world up into the same level. I'd like to see a point where, regardless of cultural differences, and I would like to see, as Chris says again, the cultural differences maintained. I'd like it to be that if you travel to any city in the world or any town in the world, you would walk into a modern 21st century town or city or whatever that has electricity, clean running water, good roads, good public transport, access to education for everybody, access to good hospital care, access to food and shelter, free Wi-Fi everywhere, everywhere being...
Don't forget the hookers and blow.
Maybe culturally different, but technologically on the same level, and having what they need. Now, I think if everybody had the same, if we've reached a point where we're all comfortable, then there's less need to try and kill your neighbour to get what they've got when you know that your neighbour's got the same. And it's quite a nice feeling. And it's something I'm going to say that I heard somebody else say, and it was a musician called Matt Elliott, who I had on my other podcast, the Future Library podcast. And it's just this week it's actually up, so go and listen to that. He's a musician from Bristol who lives in France, and he describes himself as an anarchist politically, but a kind of proper anarchist, where he believes in kind of localized government, where you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and you look after each other and this kind of thing. But he said that it would give him a nice feeling to know that his neighbours had the same as he did and were as comfortable as he was, and that he could go anywhere in the world and everybody be, at least the same level of comfort. And that would make everybody, I think, feel, like I said just a minute ago, we'd feel less likely to have to go and kill each other to get shit, because we wouldn't be jealous of our neighbours. Long term, I would like it if Mars could be colonised, because I think it'd be really interesting to have at least 2 planets with, 2 habitable planets in our solar system. But if that's not possible, or if it is and we can go further, I'd like to see us eventually get out of our solar system and start to spread out into space. And in the very far future, whatever we have evolved into, I would like to see a galaxy or even a universe that is becoming, when you look up in the night sky, I'd like people in the far future to look up in the night sky and see something that they know is teeming with life, just like we do when we look down at the ground here. We can look at a pile of Earth and we know that there's millions and millions of microbes in it. I'd like people to be able to look up at the stars and go, well, over there, that star has these planets orbiting it, those planets have these people on it. that, the stuff over there, that galaxy, we're just starting to. We've got ships going to that galaxy. They're going to be there at some point.
You use your future iPhone to look at the star map and be like,
yeah.
And that one's Earth.
Yeah. That's a really nice point. I will condense it down to one point. I would like to imagine that at some point, one of my descendants will be standing on the surface of another planet, looking at a star and saying, "That's Sol, and that's the system that my family came from." Yeah. I think that'd be really interesting. Cliff, you've joined us. Yes. What would you like to add to that?
I pretty much, Lenny said largely what I'd like to see. I think the biggest, there's two pieces that I think is there. Number one is a one united planet. That a one world government, and I don't mean that from the conspiracy theory sense. I mean, that we all represent the planet. We have people, I don't know, represent the UK or whatever. But basically a one world government. We're all pulling in the same direction. We don't have to worry about this border stuff and religion stuff. The problems like the Middle East will go away because we're not worrying about turf and resources and things of that nature. So that's the other one. But the main one is, I think we really need a sense of vision, because money limits vision. This idea of going to space and things. Oh, well, we can't do that because it's going to cost a load of money. Let's drop the money.
That's why we need the nano factory thing. We seriously need something that jumps post scarcity. Because the second you don't need to worry about building anything or having anything, we're free to do so much more.
Yeah, when expense isn't an issue and when the fuel source isn't an issue.
Resources cease to be an issue.
As soon as that happens, the sky really is the limit. And well, the sky isn't the limit at that point.
I wonder, I couldn't help but laugh with Fiona talking about her corns, because I'm thinking, you can't be that short that that's the only thing you can think of, something only a few, a foot and a half from your nose.
I have to say though, Cliff, it does. I'm gonna just make the focus you, just so the listeners can, well, not the listeners, because
you've got like the Eye of Sauron going on in the corner.
I do notice that over to one side of where you are, you've got this kind of water thing going on. It does look to me like you are actually broadcasting from the 60s Star Trek set.
No, not quite. That'll be next week.
Are you in Kirk's boudoir?
No, I've got more hair than he has.
Oh yeah, and you're not wearing a girdle.
Behind him any moment.
So you have an after show coming up.
I do. I have an after show coming up. It is already ready on the other screen, ready to go. All I have to do is hit end the other call, and it will be on.
And that will be on the channel.
That will be on my channel, Cliffjumper 24.
And that will be open for all viewers to hop into very shortly, I should imagine. Well, you should tell us a bit about it because it's your show. So.
We're probably going to continue on with the conversation we're having here because there's a limited panel here. And then it shall do as always does, which will turn into just general arsehole behaviour and calling people names and probably mentioning Jason Burns as well.
And then Len wanted to bring something up which kind of fed out of a hangout that we had earlier in the week. Go ahead, Len.
Yeah, thank you kindly very much, guys, for letting me plug this. It's kind of shamelessly, but we're going to try anyway. We had a hangout earlier in the week in which mental health issues came up, and we talked a lot, and a lot of people had the stones to talk about things that aren't easy for anyone to talk about, and really I was just there in kind of a spectator capacity. But from that conversation, I was inspired, you might say, divinely. I've started two groups. One's on Google Plus and one's on Facebook. Now, for your convenience, they're both named the same thing, so they're very easy for you to find. The idea of these hangouts, excuse me, because that's coming in the future. The hangouts for these groups coming in the future. But the reason for this Facebook group and the G Plus group is to discuss mental health issues, but also to offer a support system for the people who help other people deal with their mental health issues. Because I feel like that's a kind of an undealt with area, like, you know what I mean? I talk a lot about what I've been through, and I want you guys to talk about what you've been through. I've got someone commissioned to make me a very cool banner for the websites, and we've got awesome people on there. Literally all it's missing at this point is you wonderful people to come join us. If you have anything you want to talk about, maybe you've got mental health issues, maybe you don't, maybe you help someone who has mental health issues, maybe you just want to come and learn more from people who actually experience these things. And it's an awesome website. I know because I'm on both of them, and I would be really appreciative if you guys wanted to come check it out. No pressure, but seriously, do it or I'll kill you.
And what would the link be for that?
The link will be, I'll post one here, and I'll post one in the chat section for the video, the subsequent video that's coming up. I'll take care of that personally.
Okay, and it's called...
I'm sorry, yes. It'd be super helpful if I mentioned the name of the motherfucker. We're called the League of Heroes, so if you go on Facebook and put in the search area, the League of Heroes, ignore all the comic book stuff, and then join the group. The League of Heroes, it's the same thing on Google+. God, I'm terrible at plugging things. It's the same thing with Google+, the League of Heroes, and you're going to see some awesome people on there and awesome conversation. Very, very supportive and hopefully very informative as well.
And just to steal some thunder off the back of Lenatar, on that same subject, at some point in the semi-near future, I'm looking to start a fortnightly to monthly podcast discussion about mental health and the issues that it faces. For instance, workplace bullying, mental health and religion, etc., etc., etc. And hopefully I'll get a group together who will want to discuss this with me. Sounds like I'll probably be hijacking the Wonky Shillelagh. That's just the name now, the Wonky Shillelagh.
And I'll accept it gracefully.
Yes, so you can be my co-spaz. It'll be great.
I'm looking forward to it.
So just keep an eye out if you're on the Fundamentally Flawed and Beyond Facebook group. You may be hearing more about this, and it will be certainly something open. It won't be terribly formal. I want to have basically the same chat we had about mental health, but slightly more focused, about once a month to fortnightly. So.
And if anybody's watching who wants to know about that, it's on my channel, The Alex. You'll find it in the recent events or whatever it was uploaded thing. It was a discussion about depression and mental health issues, and it was quite a kind of really, I think it was a really good discussion. I think everybody's been. I think it took everybody by surprise at how positive it was.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. It was great.
It was a really good experience, and I think it was one of those things where, so often we use Google products for evil, which is ironic considering what their motto is. But it is. I was hoping there'd be a laugh there, but there isn't. Come on, I set that one up. There was quite a good joke in there. Nobody laughed. Maybe I should have a little bit of paper. Thanks everyone. You're not making it better. But yeah, so we did do something useful with a Google product. So we didn't do any evil with it, and that was quite nice. So I think this is something that's important. And I want to kind of quickly say this as well before we finish. I think it's important that there has been a lot of kind of quite dickish behaviour in the online community. Kind of certainly with the atheist-theist kind of thing recently, there's been a lot of this kind of flagging bullshit, people trying to get accounts pulled down, people acting very kind of petty and idiotic, and I think it'd be kind of quite nice to maybe try and get the fuck over that. That could be good. And I'm going to say something. The person that's got me thinking about that surprised me, Ran Campbell. If Ran Campbell can do it, and he seems to be able to, then I think all of us can do it. And I think it'd be a good idea to, instead of it being this great big fight, then it could be quite nice if, like the conversation we had the other day, everybody coming from different backgrounds, there wasn't any kind of mention of saying, you can't be more mentally ill than me because you're not a religious person, or this is wrong, you can't have that type of depression because you're Muslim, or you're an atheist, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. So, we're all human beings. Let's put that shit aside and look to the future.
So, peace, love, and 3 breaths.
Yeah, peace, love, 3 breaths, total recall, living on Mars but able to breathe. So, before we round things up, is there anything else anybody would like to add?
I have boobs.
No, I would just like to say thank you to Alex for actually hosting that hangout. Because, I mean, it was at very short notice. I know a lot of people were really sad to have missed it. But it was a touch of genius to have
Hopefully
it.
there'll be more genius touching this shortly.
So I think we should all say a big thank you to Alex for having that brainwave in the first place.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Alex.
Well, I'll take that again. So the show's going to hop over in a moment to
Mark types of balls.
Yeah, and he's capitalised. He's actually made it bold. Very good.
Bold.
Yeah. Has somebody got a link for it?
For that show.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
Say it
It'll
right,
be-
Fiona.
So that Mark
Say
can
it
see
right. It's a linky.
I will send Mark.
Sorry, linky.
I'll send Mark a wee linky for that, so you can watch it because I think it was really good. And I think let's look at things like that in the future, and let's look at positive stuff. So all that's left to say then is we'll be back in 2 weeks, which will be what's the date in 2 weeks? It'll be the date that's 2 weeks from today.
The 18th.
And we will have a secret guest.
We will have a guest.
An extra special subject.
Yeah. Do you want to? Should we say what the subject is?
What's happening?
18th. It'll be the 18th,
The 18th, and we're going to be getting sexy.
I think.
Sexy.
Is this going to be the topless show?
This might be
I
the
don't know if it's going to be the top show. It is, however, going to be the show all about sex.
It is.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
Sexy times. It will be talking about sex. It's going to be talking, but not just about sex. It's not just going to be kind of like, oh, look at my willy.
Look at my wonky shillelagh.
Yeah, look at my wonky shillelagh, and let's compare the size of our nipples, and let's all watch porn together. It's not going to be like that. It's actually going to be talking about things like sex work and the ethics of that, and
sexual repression and
yeah,
via religion.
yeah, all the stuff that comes up that people.
Comes up during sex.
All the stuff that comes up during sexy times. It's going to be fun. So so that's all there is to say for this. So anybody else got anything to say before I hit stop broadcast?
I've got food.
No. Well, thank you all for that. Well, thank you for the expert panel. Again, we've managed to get the thing. Chris looks like he's flicking me the V's, or you wanted to say something?
He's like,
I'm giving you some. I'm peacing out.
You're piecing out. You see, in the UK, that means something else.
Yeah.
Like that. If you go like that,
peace. That, fuck off.
yeah. And so as the sound
Either or.
as this sound. That sound means that the post show is about
Calling
to
us
start.
to the post.
Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the post show, and we'll be back in a fortnight talking about sexy fun times.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.